Okay, so today we will discuss users and the respective privileges. Okay,
Okay.
if you remember in our second or third class, we discussed about permissions. They were basic
Yes.
permissions. Okay, permissions are at object level. When I say object level means at a document level, at a folder level, at a cabinet level, the permissions will be defined. Whether that document can be read by someone or not, that document can be deleted by someone or not, that document can be checked out by someone or not, or at a folder level, whether someone can create another folder inside that folder, whether someone can delete that folder, and something like that.
Okay.
So they were
Okay.
object level basic permissions. Okay, similarly, we will discuss about extended permissions also later on when we talk about security topic. Today we are
Okay.
going to discuss something which is called privileges. So there are similar to permissions, we will have two kind of privileges. One will be
Okay.
basic privileges and the other one will be extended privileges. And those privileges will be associated with users. What a user can do from among those basic or extended privileges is something that we are going to discuss today. Okay.
Okay.
So we have talked that everything in Documentum is an object.
Output.
Correct? Correct.
Yes.
And each individual object will have an R object ID and the respective property depending upon the kind of object it is. It will be depending on whether it belongs to a document object, a DM document, or whether it belongs to a DM user or it belongs to DM cabinet or DM folder. Because we have seen that there will be different properties or attributes or columns in the database table against an object type table. The properties will be different and the methods will be different. For example,
Mm.
you can check in and check out a document. You cannot check in and check out a folder. Correct? You will have
Yes.
who created the document, whether it can be checked out or not, who modified it last time, or authors, who are the authors of a document. These are the
Mm.
attributes and properties associated with a DM underscore document or its subtypes object. But for a
Mm.
user, the properties will be different, right? So each
Yeah. Yeah.
user is an individual user account with access to the repository. So when we talk about user, it means a user who can access the Documentum repository.
Mm.
Okay, and each
Okay.
individual user will be of type dm underscore user or its subtype. Correct. Because depending upon your organization's requirement, we talked about document, right? There, for each department there can be different type of document, because different properties are required for each department, right, to be
Yes.
created. Similarly,
Mm.
users also for different department, whoever comes to that department, they might have requirement to add some property to subtype of DM user. So that's why they will create an instance of either DM user or its respective subtype relevant for that particular department.
Okay.
Okay. So let's say Gina's account is created, your account is created, Andre's account is created. These are individual user accounts, which are individual user objects created at the repository level, which will be accessing the repository. Now, both these
Mm.
users may have different permissions or same permissions. Same permission if they belong to the same department of the organization, because they will be performing the same action or task. And they may
Mm.
have different restricted permission. Let's say in the repository for an HR document, only HR should have an access, right? Not someone
Yeah.
from an IT department should have an access to the HR document. So that's how you will be defining the roles and responsibilities of these users in the repository for the respective folders and documents. Okay.
Okay.
So how this is usually a very standard login page where you
Mm.
provide your login name, then you provide the
Mm.
password, and you select the repository. There may be different repositories created in Documentum content server. So,
No.
whichever repository you have access to, in whichever repository you want to currently work, based on your access, you can log in and you can perform your tasks.
Okay.
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 Now, there can be this password that you provide here, right?
Mm.
This password that you provide here, it depends on so many other kind of things. If you have an LDAP authentication, right, with Microsoft Active Directory is a product which helps you integrate your login with LDAP. And in 90% of the organization, you will see that all the general users
Mm.
get authenticated using LDAP Active Directory authentication. Or you can have system account that you have created. So at the server level, you may have created an account in a particular domain, and based on that
Mm.
particular domain or based on the operating system account authentication mechanism, your account will get authenticated. So whatever mechanism has been configured for you, you can check with your system administrators, and based on that only you need to provide your password here, because
Okay.
there will be different password for your user account at Active Directory level, and there may be different password for your operating system level.
Mm.
Usually,
Okay.
for a general user account, it is always LDAP Active Directory authentication. But for system account, like service account, which is created to implement certain functionality of an application, in those
Mm.
cases, you will create service account, and that may require operating system level authentication, or that may also require LDAP. It depends on your organization's business structure, actually. Okay.
Okay.
So whenever you provide a password, it will first be get checked in the backend to help you
Mm.
authenticate. If it finds that relevant user account is there, the relevant password, whatever password you are providing and whatever password mechanism has been configured for you, if it matches
Mm.
with that, then you get the access to the application, and the login screen will be gone from here, and the application screen will be loaded. Okay.
Okay.
Now more options, from here you can select the language which you are comfortable with. But by default it will be English United States. But if you want to change it to some, let's say, European language or some Chinese
Okay.
language, Mandarin language, right? So you need to buy a
Mm.
separate license for that. It is called
Okay.
language pack. So if you have a
Okay.
language pack configured where your counterparts or your colleagues sitting in China also needs to have an access to the application, their user account will be created similarly, but they need to select the language from here. So the application will be shown in that language to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the domain?
But for that you need to buy a separate license. And domain is the same domain. So there can be multiple domains against which the user account will be created. So your user account is created against which domain, based on that only your account will be authenticated, otherwise it will fail. But this is not a mandatory field. Usually people leave this field empty unless and until there is a
Okay.
very specific business requirement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now we will talk about two kind of um, access mechanisms through which you get whatever level of access on the application. So your user account is created, now you can log in into the application. But once you
Mm.
log in, what are the things that you can perform? Whether there is any restriction to what you can perform, and if there is restriction, then what level of restrictions are applied on your user account? That is something which is given by permissions, privileges, and client capability.
Okay.
Okay, so every user account that is created at the time of creation itself, or later on
Mm.
also you can change it or update it. At the time of creation itself, you define what level of permission that user is going to have on the client application. So as the name suggests, client capability. So at whatever client application level, what capability a user got to perform what tasks, whether they can create a document or not, whether they can initiate a workflow or not, all of that will be defined by client capability. This is not
Okay.
controlled by content server. This is only enforced at the respective client application level. Always remember this. Client
Okay.
capability, basic permission was controlled by content server. The basic
Okay.
permissions, none, browse, read, relate, version, write,
Mm-hmm.
delete. Remember? But the
Yes.
client capability is not controlled or governed by content server. It is only enforced at a particular client application level.
Okay.
And then we will discuss about something called privileges, which is basic privileges and extended privileges, and they will
Mm.
be enforced by content server. So
Okay.
basic permissions and extended permissions, basic privileges and extended privileges, these things are governed and controlled by content server. But client
Okay.
capability, as the name suggests, it is only enforced at a respective client application. So a same
Mm.
user can have some more permission in one application, but the same user
Mm.
can have less permission on a different application. That will be governed by client capability. Clear?
Okay. Yes.
Now these are four types of client capability that you need to discuss. The
Okay.
minimum and the by default client capability that gets assigned to a user at the time of its creation, by default it is consumer. As
Okay.
the name suggests, you will only consume the information in the client application. Consume means what? Something is already there, a document is already created, a folder is already created. You can just go and see it.
Okay.
You cannot edit anything, you cannot review anything unless and until it is already created. So when someone gives you a workflow activity, then you can go and review it, but no more than that. Let's say someone gives you a workflow activity with an attachment of a document, so you can go
Mm.
and open the document, you can view the document, and then that's all you can do.
Okay.
You cannot check out the document, you cannot check in the document, you cannot create your own
Mm-hmm.
document, nothing you can do. You can only consume. That's what consumer is.
Okay.
Then comes contributor. It means after consumer, you are now able to contribute also. Okay, contribute means you are now able to check out a document, check in a document, you can create a document, you can create and contribute your own content with other people. You can initiate a workflow tasks for the workflow that is already created in the system. So all of that can be done by contributor. This is the second level.
Okay.
And then comes coordinator. So now you are
Mm.
having further more permissions or capability
Mm.
rather in the client. You are now able
Mm.
to coordinate with other departments, either using workflow, managing the life cycles, managing the virtual documents, creating your own workflow template, which can then be initiated by contributor. This contributor was not able to create his own workflow template. He was just able to initiate the workflow which was already created.
Okay.
But coordinator can create his own new workflow template and then decide who should be receiving this workflow task or who should not be receiving this workflow task. Who can
Mm.
change the life cycle state of a document from draft state to review state to approval state. That can be
Mm.
decided by coordinator,
Okay.
right? And system administrator can do everything.
Oh.
They can do all the things that these guys are able to do. Okay. So based on
Okay.
the client capability, either you assign these values, and again, these are all attributes of a user, property of a DM user. You assign
Mm.
these at the time of its creation, or you can change it later on also. So either you
Okay.
assign these values directly as consumer contributor, or there is a numerical number assigned to each one of these. Okay.
Okay.
So there is one more thing I wanted to discuss here.
Mm.
You remember when we talked about under tools, you will see API and DQL yesterday.
Yeah.
You will not be able to see if you are not a system administrator client capability.
Okay.
So if you have a system administrator client capability assigned to your user profile, then only
Mm.
in tools you can go and see API and DQL. And then only you will be able to see system administrator tab in the left hand panel. Let me
Okay.
show you which screen I'm talking about.
Yeah, I remember in the right hand side under Tools tab.
Tools tab you
Uh,
remember, but there is one thing you might have missed yesterday. So I'm just showing you that. Where is that? No, there you will come. Hmm. You see this administration? If
yes.
you are if you are not system administrator client capability assigned to you, then this will be
Mm.
invisible to you. This
Okay.
option itself will not show. Okay.
Okay.
Because there
Okay.
are so many administration tasks that you can perform, like creating a user, creating a folder, creating a cabinet, assigning a permission on the folder and cabinet, creating new permissions, adding
Mm-mm.
users into different groups, user management, job management, methods management, security management, LDAP management, right? Creating a new LDAP thread and then associating it with your application so that whenever a
Mm.
new user is created in that active directory by your HR,
Mm.
they get synced with Documentum directly.
Okay.
So all those
Like
kind
if
of administration tasks can be performed from this option, and this will not be visible to you if your client capability is not system administrator.
okay, if we are a coordinator, then it will show the name coordinator there, or
No, no,
it
nothing
it
will
will
show.
not show.
You will just be able to perform more tasks in your cabinet section.
Okay.
Yeah. This administration tab and the under tools you will see API and DQL. will be
Mm.
visible to you only when you have a system administrator client capability. Thus,
Okay.
this DQL and API can still be made visible to you through some other configurations if your
Mm.
application is customized to that level on the basis of some other client capability, like on the basis of coordinator and contributor also, because they should be able to
Okay.
run query and fetch the reports on the documents on
Yeah.
which they have access.
Yeah.
But system administrator will be able to do more things, right? So they will be able to see definitely those options plus this
Mm.
administration tab. This option is extra that they will see.
Okay.
This option is not visible to anyone else. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Now comes privileges. Okay. I told you that there are two types of privileges: basic privileges and
Basic,
extended
extended.
privilege. So
Okay.
this what you see in front of your screen. These are basic privileges and they are also associated with users. This client capability is also associated with users, but only for a particular client application. For a different client
Okay.
application, same user can have different permissions. But
Mm.
in a repository, these users and the respective basic privileges will be always same for all applications as long as it is
Okay.
for that particular. So using one repository, you can have many applications. So in
Mm.
all those applications, this client capability can be different. But in all those applications, these basic privileges will remain the same because in the back end, they are using the same repository in which these user profiles are created.
Okay.
Okay. So the lowest privilege is called none. None means you have nothing. You cannot do anything.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. As the name suggests, you cannot do anything.
Okay.
Then the first one is, and you see this number zero, correct? So whenever you
Yes.
want to change the value, okay,
Mm.
change the value of the privileges of a particular user, you and when you are running a DQL query or API commands, you will see that the existing value is set as zero. You will not see the name none mentioned there.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. So
Yeah.
you will have to remember these numbers. Okay, and
Okay.
based on
Mm.
these numbers, you will be able to assign the right basic privileges to a user so that they can perform the right kind of tasks. Okay.
Okay.
Now, coming here, zero means nothing, you cannot do anything. One means create type. So you will be able to create your own custom object type. Remember, yesterday we
Mm.
talked about creating HSBC underscore accounts department underscore
Yes.
document. Who can create that? Someone with a create type basic privileges can only perform it. No one else can.
Okay. Okay.
A system you admin and super user can anyways do that, but from among
Mm.
these lists only a create type person can do who has a basic privilege value assigned as 1.
Okay.
Okay, and then comes create cabinet. So who can create a new cabinet? Person who has a create cabinet basic privileges assigned to his name.
Okay.
Who can create a new group and then assign different users in that group? Person with a create group basic privileges, and the number associated with that is 4. So zero,
Okay.
1, 2, for you see it is getting doubled. 1,
Yes.
twice 2, twice 4, twice
Yeah.
8. Then 8 is system admin. System admin can perform all the basic administration functions. Okay.
Okay.
A system
Okay.
administrator, a system administrator cannot create another system administrator. For
Okay.
that, if a system administrator user account has to be created, it will require a super user, which is the
Supervisor.
maximum privilege in Documentum. This
Okay.
super user is the maximum privilege in Documentum who can even manage a system administrator.
Okay.
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 You understood this? These are called
Yes.
basic privileges. Basic privileges is about what you can do at the repository level, not at
Okay.
object level. That
Mm.
object level permission was basic permissions. But what you can do at the entire repository level, like creating custom object type, creating cabinets, creating groups, and other
Mm.
administrative tasks, they are given
Mm.
by basic privileges. Clear?
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
And then comes extended privileges, and extended privileges has nothing to do with what you can do at repository level. It is more to do with your audit functionality. So who can create an audit, who can configure an audit, who can delete the audit entry in the database table, that will be given by extended privileges. Always remember, extended privileges is all about auditing and compliance.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so again, numbers are associated with that. If you see 0, 8, 16, 32. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Extended privileges. So extended privileges is an attribute in user table, DM user table.
Mm.
Okay, and basic
Okay.
privilege is also an attribute in table. I will tell you which attribute that is. Okay,
Okay.
so none means you cannot do anything about audit. You cannot even view the audit.
Mm. Okay.
So let's say you want to check like who deleted a document yesterday, right? You cannot check
Yeah.
it if you have a none extended privilege.
Mm. Okay.
Who can check it? Person with a view audit can only run a query and find it
Mm.
who deleted the document. And
Yes.
these audit related entries are stored in this table. You see this? DM underscore audit
Yeah.
trail. So in the DM underscore audit trail table, if you run select star from DM underscore audit trail, and then you pinpoint to a particular event, like when was it deleted, when was it modified, when was it checked out, what was the source of this activity, like from which IP address this activity was initiated, all of that can be checked from this table. The activities that you perform from the front end, if they all get started updated in the auditing table, then the database size will keep on increasing, and there are hundreds and thousands of users on a daily basis who keep on performing different activities. And if you keep on updating all those entries in the auditing table, then this audit table will become so big that the entire database will crash, right?
Mm.
So for that
Yeah.
purpose, Documentum has architected it in such a way that they are only enabling the audit for some critical functionality, such as deletion or updation, only on certain attributes of an object type. Not all the attributes and not all the object types are audited. Always remember. Okay.
Okay.
So if you want to enable auditing for your custom object type that you have created against a particular attribute of that custom object type, then you need to enable it manually from the administration tab I showed you just now. Remember audit admission, if you want to enable auditing at that level, then you need to enable it manually. So it will be a part of your configuration and customization.
Okay.
Because you always remember that whenever you enable auditing, it takes extra hit on the database, primarily on this particular table, DM underscore audit trail table. So you need to be very conscious that whenever you are enabling some auditing to check something, then you revert it also. If you don't revert it, then it will crash the database and the server on which database is running.
Okay.
Clear?
Yes, clear.
So this is just a reading what all system administration privilege can do. So
Mm.
as I told you just now, that these are individual basic privileges that you need to assign to a particular user. Now, if you
Mm.
remember in basic permissions, we were saying that the basic permissions are hierarchical in nature. Hierarchical means if you get the further permission, let's say none is the lowest, and I told you that you need to remember that in sequence, correct?
Yeah.
None, browse, read, relate, version, write, delete. So if you have, let's say, write, then you can do check in, check out also, so you can do version also, correct?
Mm.
That
Yes.
was basic permissions, but in privileges, it is not like that. For example, if you have a create group privilege, it doesn't mean that you can create cabinet also. These two need to be separately assigned to a user for them to perform both these tasks,
Okay.
right? So this is not hierarchical, and you can assign the summation of these two numbers as their basic privilege. For example, if you are assigning 6, basic
Mm.
privilege as 6, it means they can perform create group also and they can perform create cabinet also. If you assign 7, it means create group plus create cabinet plus create type,
Okay.
and the summation of no two numbers will be same, or no three different numbers will be same, it will always be unique.
Okay.
So that's why it is these numbers are assigned in such a permutation and combination that if you want to assign multiple privileges to one user up to this level, after this level it is hierarchical. System administrator can do all of this.
Okay.
Super user can do all of the above. But until this level, it is not hierarchical. So you need to sum these numbers to assign multiple privileges. Is this clear?
Yes, it is clear.
Same applies for here. If you want to assign someone to be able to configure the auditing or delete the
Okay.
auditing, then you need to assign these summation of these two numbers. For example, if someone has to be able to enable new auditing, then they should have the config audit permission. correct?
Hmm.
If someone
Yeah.
be able to delete the audit entry, then they need to have a purge audit extended privilege, which is 16 number.
Mm-mm.
Okay? And someone who needs to view it is 32 number. But if someone needs to do all of this, then you sum this number 32, 840, and 1656. Okay, they can do
Okay.
for all of this. But system administration can perform all of the above. They can create folder also, a cabinet also. They can create custom object type also, right?
Mm. Okay.
And they can create group also. They can grant and revoke type also. So existing type that is created, they can delete it. Okay,
Okay.
they can delete an existing group. They can delete an existing cabinet. They can delete the privileges from a particular user or grant some more privileges, right?
Okay.
Activate or deactivate a user, system administration can do. It's not required to have a super user for that purpose. System admin can
Mm.
perform that task. Permissions, we talked about ACLs briefly, right? We will talk about that in detail. ACL is security. So whatever permission and privileges you want to assign to a user, you club that in a particular template and assign on the folder. Who all the fold Let's say there are 10 folders on which you want to assign different set of people similar kind of
Okay.
permission. You don't
Okay.
want to assign them one by one on all those folders. You can create a template which is called ACL here, ACL template, and then you apply that one template on all the folders.
Okay.
So that becomes easier for you to manage the permissions of similar kind of folders which require similar kind of permission for different set of people.
Yeah.
Correct. So all these things can be performed by system administrator, and super user can perform everything that a system admin can do, plus they can create a new system administration, or they can revoke the permission of another system administrator. That cannot be done by system admin.
Yes.
Okay. And by default, a super user assumes the ownership of all the objects in the repository. So let's say you are the owner of a document, so owner underscore name is assigned to you. But whoever is a
Okay.
super user, let's say there are two or three super users created in your application, they are also by default, you will not see the name as an owner of a super user, but they are anyways an owner. So they are owner of everything in Documentum repository.
Okay.
Okay. And let's say you have checked out a document to edit it. Okay.
Okay.
And you went on vacation, keeping it checked out itself and locked on your name, right?
Hmm.
So a
Yeah.
local copy of that document is already downloaded on your machine for you to update it. I told you this process. And then once you
Yeah. Yeah.
check in, then that local copy gets updated and imported into the repository and gets checked in. Correct?
Yes.
So when it
Yes.
is at checked out state and when you are on vacation, only a super user can cancel the checkout. No one else. Either you can come and cancel the checkout or a super user can come and cancel the checkout because they have the
Okay.
ownership of the document,
Okay.
right? So
Yes.
this super user can delete system level permissions. They can register and unregister an external third party table, the value of
Mm.
which can be used in the drop down value of an application. I told you briefly about this, remember? If there is
Yes.
a third party database table and some attribute of that database table has certain values that needs to be exposed at a drop down value or pick list value as we call it in technical terms, if they want to be exposed as a drop down value in some drop down field of an application form, then you first need to register that table. Who can do that registering and unregistering? Only a super user can do.
Super user. No.
Yes.
Yes.
So to create a user, you must have a system admin or super user privilege. Okay. Create cabinet, create group, and create type. They cannot create user. Or client
Okay.
capability wise, consumer, contributor, coordinator. They cannot create a user. Okay.
Okay.
From privilege perspective, you need to have system admin or super user privilege. From client
Okay.
capability perspective, you need to have system administrator. Because if you don't have this, then you will not even see that administration option. Remember?
Yes.
Now you can be smart saying that, okay, even if I don't see that administration option, I can go and run a query on the server side. Or maybe from the UI, go to tools, click on DQL, and I will run a query. That will also fail because your privileges will not match at the repository level. Because remember that privileges are controlled at
Super user.
content server level.
Acha.
Privileges are controlled at content server level. Client capability is only at client level. correct?
Okay.
So you may try
Yeah.
to fox the application by directly running the query at the server level, but there the
Mm.
privileges will be checked for you, correct?
Yeah.
And if you don't have the privileges, it will not allow you to create a user. Clear? Now how to create a user from GUI? Like this. In you will see this administration tab only when you have this system administrator client capability. Clear so far?
Yes.
Yeah. So under administration tab, under user man, see all these things you can do from administration tab. User
Okay.
management, audit management, security. This is ACL. Okay.
Okay.
Then comes job management. So under jobs, you will see jobs and methods, and then these alias formats, custom object types, storage, everything you can do from administration tab. Under this configuration, you configure the entire repository and content server. Okay, everything. This is LDAP configuration under user management.
Okay.
So under user management, you go to users, click on file, new user.
Okay.
Okay. Now this user form will come. This is again customized, as I told you, right? Everything in Documentum is customizable as long as you are able to find those 4 or 5 files, right? The right JSP file, which consists of the UI design of yours page, like HTML, CSS3, right? Then you need to find the behavior file, which is your class file, which tells you at the click of the submit button or OK button what happens in the backend. That will be defined by your class file. So you find the JSP, you find the class file, and then in order to execute that class file, what are those dependent libraries, what are the property files, and all. The XML file is the deployment descriptor. So all of that is required if you want to customize the look and feel, the options here, enable the option, disable the option, everything you can do from finding those files. Clear?
Yes.
So you see this state here. Okay, so since you are creating a new user, it will be active.
Okay.
But once the user account is created, then you can further customize it at a job level, which will run, let's say, at a month on a monthly basis. And that will find that if a user has not logged in into Documentum, they have not accessed the Documentum application for the past 30 days, then deactivate that account. So there will be an
Okay.
option called inactive also here.
Okay.
So again, this option that you see in the left hand side, they are nothing but the label or the display names of these attributes. Correct?
Okay. Yes.
Now, against each of these attributes, there is actually an attribute in the table at dm underscore user level. So this state is
Mm.
nothing but user underscore state. This name is nothing but user underscore name. This user login name is user underscore login underscore name.
Login.
Similarly, this is user underscore domain. This is user underscore source. This source is that we discussed some time back. Operating system level account, LDAP authentication, then inline
Ah,
password.
yeah.
So instead of any other authentication mechanism, you provide a password here itself. So when you select
Okay.
inline, you need to provide the password for the user here itself, and you need to share the password with the user. So after first time login, they can go and change it themselves.
Okay.
That will be inline password. Then you will have to provide the email address of the user. If it is a user operating system name, then you need to provide all of that here. You remember you asked about what is that domain, right? So whatever domain you provide here,
Yes.
you need to select the same in the login screen if that is mandatory. But this is not a mandatory field. But if you are configuring like that, then remember to provide that domain in the login screen.
Okay.
If there are multiple repositories in which this user account is created, then which repository is the home repository, which will be by default selected when they try to log in. That you can select from here.
Okay.
Similarly, if you want to restrict the access of this user to a particular folder, then you can select that
Mm.
folder here.
Okay.
Now, which folder can be a default folder where this user will be most probably primarily working on day in, day out, or whatever documents they are searching belongs to that folder itself, then you can select that default folder.
Okay.
Now, if you select a default group here, it means that user will automatically become a member of that group. So you will not have to
What?
manually go at a group level. I will show you that group screen was there, right? You see this group?
Yes.
So you can create, when you go to groups, you can create groups here. And in that group,
Mm.
you can add as many members as users. So the groups will have other groups also, and they can have other users also. depending upon the
Mm.
department and the functionality that they are performing, correct?
Yes.
So if you select a particular group as a default group here, that user becomes a member of that. You will not have to
Okay.
explicitly go to this group and then add the user.
Okay.
So at the time of user creation, you can do that.
Okay.
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 Now, as I told you, right? So there are so many options under this state. User underscore state is the name of the attribute at the database level. And then you have many options in the drop down. For example, active means the account is active. Inactive means the account is inactive. And there are different values associated with this active also. If
Okay.
user state is set to 0, it means it is considered. It
Okay.
means they have tried to use the password 5 or 10 times incorrectly. So you can have a provision in the system that if someone tries the password incorrectly for more than 5 times, their account can get locked out. So
Okay.
that is called option 2.
Okay.
Okay, and so on and so forth. Okay. So I already discussed and explained you about these options, right? Default group. Similarly, default permission set
Yes.
template. So permission set template we will talk about later. But as I told you that if different set of users are supposed to have similar kind of permission on, let's say, 5 or 10 folders, then you club them together to create a template. So if this
Okay.
user has to be a part of a particular template, then you can select that default template from here. This is called security
Okay.
template or permission template or ACL template. You can use any of these three words to discuss or communicate with someone or in your mail
Okay.
community. So that you can associate here.
Okay.
All right. Then here you will see the database name. So if you want to grant this user a particular access to a particular database schema, I hope now you
Okay.
know what database is and what database schema is or instance is. So if you want to
Mm.
grant that user a permission to that database, you can mention the name of the DB schema here. Okay.
Okay.
And this is the privileges. Remember, we just talked about privilege that none is default privilege. Then you can have create type, create cabinet,
Yes,
create group,
cabinet.
system administrator, and super user. Five, right?
Mm.
So you can select that from here at the time of user creation.
Okay.
By default, it is none. By
Okay.
default, client capability is the most minimum client capability was, remember, consumer.
Yeah.
So that is also selected at the time of user creation. Similarly, extended privileges can also be selected. And as I told you, they are not hierarchical in nature. It means you will have to select any permutation combination like
Mm.
none, config audit, purge audit, config and purge, view and config, audit and config. All of that combination will be there here. So you can select the extended privileges also from here. This is not a
Mm.
mandatory field. By default, it is none, but you can select it.
Okay.
And then comes client capability. What is the default client capability? Consumer.
Consume.
So you can change it to contributor or coordinator or system administrator depending upon the actions that they are going to perform.
Okay.
Alias set I will not talk about right now. We will touch upon this later on. But just to understand what is an alias, let's say your name is very big. So someone calls you with your nickname, right? That becomes your
Yeah.
alias, right? So
Yes.
similarly, if something is very big in Documentum that has been created and you want to either hide that information from somebody so that they are not able to deduce what it is for, that is one reason. And second, if it is a big name and you want to create a shortcut of that, then also you create an alias. So this alias
Okay.
can be of a folder path. Let's say there is a very big path that we keep referring to in your application code. So you assign that big path to a small alias and you keep using that alias in your code. So this alias is primarily
Okay.
used for your development purpose. It has no
Okay.
administration uses. So your administrator will create it and share that with the developers for them to use it in the system,
Okay.
right? So we will talk about that in a separate section.
Okay.
Now some basic queries on user management and privileges.
Okay.
You see this? If you want to know when was the last time a user's profile was updated,
Mm.
okay? So R
Okay.
modify date is an attribute. So you will select whatever you want to find, you will select that. So select R
Yes.
modify date from name of the table in which that attribute exists, where whatever attribute information you know. So you know the
Mm.
username is Sandra. So for this particular user profile, you want to check when was it last modified. So you can run it and find it. Well,
Okay.
I will just give you a scenario. Let's say women employees usually after marriage they change their last name, correct?
Yes.
So once they change their last name, what they do is they send a request to HR asking them to get it updated in the system, correct? So once the
Yes.
HR reaches out to the internal team to update that in the system, they will update it. Now
Mm.
Documentum will have an integration with Active Directory or LDAP. So HR will get it updated at the Active Directory level, but it will get linked to Documentum. So someone is complaining that they had already raised a request, but their name is
Mm.
still showing the older name itself with an older surname.
Okay.
So you can go and check whether the job that is configured at Documentum level, which is integrated with your LDAP directory, to fetch
Mm.
new information on a daily basis, on a 24 hourly basis, or let's say on a weekly basis. If that job has run and if it is still not reflecting the new change, then you will need to
Mm.
go and check what is happening. But if the job itself has not run, then you can tell them that this job is scheduled for 7 on a weekly basis. So once this job runs, it will automatically sync your updated name at the Documentum level. Clear?
Yes, clear.
I already gave you this query. If you want to
Yeah.
find all the names of all the users who are inactivated. So I showed you
Mm.
count of users, but instead of count, if you want to show the name of users, then you select that attribute.
Okay.
If you want to know for how many users and for which all users, the user authentication mechanism, which is called user underscore source in uh, DM user table, is set at LDAP. Correct. So you will select user login domain from DM user where user source is set at query. If someone asks you, can you list down all the documents which is locked out by you or someone? Correct. So at
Yeah.
DM document level, whenever you check out a document, do you remember the attribute called R lock honor and R lock date?
Mm.
So this R lock honor is nothing but a user who has checked out a document. That person is a user in
Yes.
the system, correct?
Yes. Yes.
If you are given the name of a user and someone asks you, can you check how many documents are checked out by this person because he is on vacation now, and we need to raise a
Mm.
ticket with the super user to cancel the checkout so that other people can work on those documents, correct? This can be a requirement,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So you will find the name of the documents using select object name from DM document where r lock honor is equal to name of the document.
Okay.
Now let's say that you are not given the name of the user, you are given the email ID of the user,
Mm.
and the email ID does not give you much information about the name. So for example, in my current organization, the email ID doesn't say that my first name dot last name at company.com. It is not like that. It is the first character of my first name, then first character of my second name, and then some 00 something something at the rate techmahindra.com. So from that email ID, you cannot deduce who the user is. Correct?
Yes.
Correct. So you will have to use the inner join in that case. How will you use
Okay.
it? Right? So you already know the email address. Under administration tab from user management, there is this LDAP option, right? So you as an administrator need to go and configure that new OU under this LDAP. And then you need to change the job from job management because this job is currently running only for one of the LDAP string or OU. This under
Okay.
job management, there is a job called DM Documentum team. So if that is
Okay.
correctly created, they will sync to this Documentum user profile once this job runs under job management. So you as an administrator will have to perform the administration of all these things. So you
Mm.
need to know all of these things. So tomorrow we will talk
Okay.
about roles. Roles. Okay.
Okay.
Any question before we close?
No question, sure. It's good.
Good. Okay. So let's proceed with roles and groups tomorrow because I showed
Okay.
you, right, as part of users you also need to create different groups, and different groups are
Mm.
created for the purpose of managing those users which belong to the same department or similar function that they are performing, so that you don't
Mm.
have to manage each individual user, you are only managing that one group.
Okay.
Okay, so we will talk about the differences between groups and roles and so on and
Mm.
so forth.